Pontius Pilate is my name. As Roman governor of Judea, representative of Tiberius Caesar, I was the one who authorized Nazareth. But why should I introduce myself to you? You know me. You Christians mention my name every time you state in your creed that Jesus suffered and was crucified under my jurisdiction. I think you're passing the buck when you put all the blame for Jesus' death and suffering on my shoulders. What about his own people who brought him to me in the first place, demanding that I have him crucified? And what about yourselves? Haven't I heard you sing the words in one of your hymns? Ah, I also in my sin have wrought thy deep affliction. This indeed has been the source of thy crucifixion. If you believe that Jesus died on account of your sins, then why don't you honestly face up to your share of the guilt instead of laying it all on me? Well, I know what I did was wrong. You don't need to keep reminding me. I haven't had a decent night's sleep since it happened that day, the day you call Good Friday. It all started when I was sound asleep in the palace about 5 in the morning. How would you like to be awakened by a bunch of religious fanatics screaming and shouting outside your house? The leaders were some very important dignitaries who insisted on bringing a man into the courtroom for immediate trial at 5 in the morning. I washed the sleep out of my eyes and let them in with their prisoner. As it turned up, they had been up all night prejudging the case. They didn't want me to try the case as much as they wanted me to just rubber stamp their own conviction and their sentence of death for Jesus. When I wanted to know what it was all about, why they had awakened me so abruptly, they sarcastically said, "If he weren't a criminal, we wouldn't have brought him to you." How I hated their arrogance. They never did learn to accept their place as a conquered people under Roman rule and authority. They weren't showing me any of the respect I deserved. Of course, the feeling was mutual. I despised them as much as they did me, and I could be just as sarcastic as they could. So I said, "Take him and judge him according to your own law." That made him squirm because I knew and they knew that they didn't have the right, the authority to impose a death penalty. If they were going to use me to satisfy their bloodlust, I was determined at least to make them crawl a bit and make them beg. So they said, "This fellow's a troublemaker. He has been telling people to pay no taxes to Caesar, saying that he himself is Christ, a king." I don't know what kind of fool they took me for, pretending they were concerned about loyalty to Caesar. They themselves were among the least loyal subjects of Caesar. If Jesus had been a real threat to the Roman government, they'd have given him their secret support instead of bringing him to me asking that he be crucified. The chief priests thought Jesus posed a threat, all right, but to them as spiritual leaders, not to the might of Rome. I know I should have ended the farce right there, but you have to understand my position. They said Jesus claimed to be a king. In Roman law, that's a charge of treason. So whether I believed their charge or not, I had to examine Jesus. So I took him into the courtroom and I began to interrogate him. "Are you the king of the Jews?" I asked him point blank. I must say, he didn't look a thing like a king, standing there in chains with blood running down from the cuts on his face where they had already been punching on him. But then he said, yes, I am a king, and there was something strangely regal about his bearing. But he made it clear that his kingdom posed absolutely no threat to Caesar. He was some kind of religious Christ or Messiah. And then he said, I have come into the world to bear witness to the truth. Well, I couldn't take that seriously. I'm a politician. What is truth? I asked him. Tell me, do you know what truth, absolute truth is? Are you so sure of something that you would stake your life or your reputation on it? There must be some of you who, like me, think nothing's absolutely true. It's all relative. But I do admire the courage and the peace of mind of those followers of Jesus who accept his word as absolute truth, who live and die believing they're God's own redeemed children through faith in him. I've gone through life looking for something like that, something to believe in, something big. I haven't found it yet. But let me continue. I know that your Jesus was innocent of the charges against him. I knew it from the very moment I saw him. And I really didn't want to crucify him. I kept trying to set him free, but the people wouldn't hear of it. They kept insisting that Jesus must die. You don't understand how I could knowingly send an innocent man to his death? Don't be so sure you wouldn't do the same thing in my position. Well, looking back, I wish I hadn't done it, but what choice did I have? The awful dreams, the torments I've had since then, but I had no choice, you see. The priest said that if I didn't send Jesus to death by crucifixion, they'd report me to Caesar as one who let an enemy of the state go free. The emperor wouldn't have even taken time to investigate that. I'd have been called back in a heartbeat and maybe even executed myself. I couldn't take that chance. It was Jesus' life or mine. So I had to save my own skin. Couldn't be fussy about if there really is a right or wrong. He's just another Galilean, just somebody I'd never heard of before. Now, don't think I didn't try to let Jesus go and give him up to his enemies without a struggle. Listen to how hard I tried to let him go. I'd started a custom every year of releasing one prisoner from jail at Passover time. You know, keep the crowd pacified, make the people happy. They were a little easier to govern if I threw them a scrap like that once a year. So, I had a prisoner. I had a rotten guy in prison, as a matter of fact. His name was Barabbas. There'd been a riot, and he killed somebody. That's a bad guy. You don't want killers running loose. So I said, here's the deal. I'll let somebody go. You don't want him, but I would either give you Barabbas or Jesus could go free. Imagine my surprise when they yelled, give us Barabbas and kill Jesus. Then I heard him mention that Jesus was from Galilee, that land to the north that I am not governor over. That's not my jurisdiction. Herod runs Galilee, and King Herod was in town at the moment. So, thinking I got my way out of that when I sent Jesus to Herod and said, Herod, he's all yours. Herod dropped the ball. He asked a few silly questions, made some foolish gestures, and sent Jesus right back. Well, Herod and I started getting along after that, but it didn't solve my problem. Jesus was still in front of me. Well, how to make the crowd feel sympathetic for this guy? I'll have him scourged. Have you ever seen a man scourged? You don't want to see a man scourged. Make a strong man's stomach turn, because we Romans take a leather whip with a lot of ends, and you tie little pieces of rusty, jagged metal or bone on the end, and then you beat him on the back, and it takes off skin and flesh. You're only allowed to do it 39 times. More than that can kill some people. Even 39 can kill some people. You're a bloody mess when you're scourged. So, that's what I allowed. Jesus to be beaten and tormented. And my soldiers got into the spirit of the thing. They got a bunch of thorns, made a circle crown out of them, jammed it down on Jesus' head, and mocked him. Cruel? Well, they're Roman soldiers. What do you expect of them? But I was hoping that when people saw that, they'd feel sorry for this Jesus, and maybe their bloodlust would be over, and they'd say, that's enough, let him go. But I underestimated the depth of their hatred. So it finally came to this. I turned Jesus over to them to be crucified, knowing full well I'd passed a death sentence on an innocent man. I was wrong. I admit it. My wife, a good woman, warned me. She had a dream that night that she took to be a sign from God that I should let him go. And I couldn't listen to a hysterical woman in front of all those people watching me. Now I'm the one who's tormented my dreams, and I can't find any peace. But who are you to keep laying the death of Jesus on me in your creed? Don't you Christians say and sing that Jesus died in atonement for your sins? Doesn't that make you just as guilty as me? Doesn't that make you the ones who killed Jesus too? You may not have driven nails through his hands and feet with your own hands, but actually I didn't either. That was my soldiers who did that. But together, you and I, we're the cause of Jesus' death. Oh God, what can remove the blood from our hands? The guilt from my soul. I took some water that day, and in front of the crowd, I washed my hands in full view and said, I'm innocent of the blood of this innocent man. But that didn't take away my guilt. It didn't fool anybody. It was an attempt to justify myself, and it didn't work. And then one of my own officers, the officer that led the crucifixion detail out there to that hill called the Skull, Golgotha, Calvary, he came back saying he believes your Jesus is the Son of God. He said that on the cross, Jesus cried out, Father, forgive them. I wonder if he even meant me? If I could believe that Jesus' death was part of God's plan for the salvation of the world, that he died and paid even for my sins, that what your Jesus said about himself was true, then maybe I could sleep in peace again for a change. But I don't know. I don't know. Note, according to the Christian historian Eusebius, Pontius Pilate was removed from office in AD 36, sent back to Rome, banished to southern France, where he ultimately committed suicide. And that's the end of our dramatization for this evening.